Panthers. I think first up, it's probably best to go through their first 5 games, and then we'll get into sort of the team and their per position options that we could see for a super coach perspective. So obviously round 1, you got the Melbourne Storm. Round 2 is the Parramatta Eels. The Broncos in round 3. Round 4 is the Sydney Roosters, and round 5, Manly Sea Eagles. So it's quite a tough start. Obviously, round 1 is that Vegas trip. As actually, sorry, no, they're not going to Vegas, so I'm getting ahead of myself. What am I thinking there? But again, guys, sorry fatigue straight away, but that is a tough start. And we've said this a lot about the top, especially probably the 8 teams of last year. They've all got quite a tough start to the year, especially the top 4. So that's something that we'll probably say a lot about these first 4 teams. But you first look at that, Jesse, does it push you away slightly from maybe starting with some Panthers players, or they've been there, they've done that before, and you go, you know
Oh,
what, they're the team to beat. I'll put my
yeah.
eggs in there.
You know what? If it was any other team but Penrith, you would steer clear in a heartbeat, I think. Um, they're too good a side to let that kind of draw really affect them. Obviously, it's hard, man. That's the most brutal draw for the first 5 rounds I think I've ever seen a team have. And I can't. Besides, like, there's a lot of top teams that have hard draws at the beginning of this year, but that has to take the cake, I'm pretty sure. So it has put us like a slither of doubt in for a few players here and there, but it's Penrith at the end of the day. They're the best team in the comp. There's a good chance they come away with 5 wins. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of the level that they're at. But it is a tricky one. Like they're going through that change. Obviously, they've had the whole Luai announcement. However, that makes them change in the game style at all. But they've had a few players leave. You know, they lose Crichton. They're going to have to, I suppose they're going to bring players back in, but you don't see them make much moves. Players coming in, like they're not a team that brings these guys in. They just have them there. So that sort of stability might help shuffle around the start, I guess. But
Yeah.
it is a hard draw, man. But yeah, Penrith never in doubt, really, are they? So unless it's the Eels, that game's going to be tricky.
The one thing I will say that obviously the first game is in Melbourne, Amy Park, but the rest of the 4 games for that first 5 is in Sydney, so they will get to stay in Sydney and play their games. The next 2 is at home, then they go to Allianz and Four Pines Stadium, so Brookie Oval as well. But I sort of agree with you in a way. I was sort of off them to start with, but then I thought it is the Panthers, and they're the ones that are getting hunted, and they have done so now for pretty much 3 years. They've been the best or the benchmark of this competition, and it hasn't deterred them. You've
Mm.
seen the likes of Cleary, etc., continue to score the points that they do on a consistent weekly basis. So there is nothing that I think will stop this juggernaut of a team, and even that draw, which looks frightening, as you said, for any other team. The positions now, I want to talk about. Obviously, we've opened the Supercoach app. We're going to go through them, sort of not list every single player, I think, because I think that's a bit silly and a bit time wasted, but talk
Mm.
about certain players in each position that could become a pivotal sort of player for whatever reason for Supercoach, especially to start with. We like to focus on, as you said, generate some cash flow, things like that, and also get the points in when we can and start early. So hooker first up, obviously Mitch Kenny will be the starting 9 there.
Yeah.
Doesn't really do anything. There is a lot of talk about hookers this year, and a lot of people out there saying it's Harry Grant or nothing, and they may have a point. We have obviously both said differently to that, and not saying we don't rate Harry Grant. That'd be crazy, but when we talk about the Storm, you'll hear why. But again, Sonny Luke, everyone got stung by him last
Yeah.
year. I'm not going anywhere near that this year. Luke Summerton could be interesting if there is an injury to Mitch Kenny, because I think what happened last year, it showed that Sonny Luke wasn't necessarily as high up on Ivan's list as everyone probably anticipated or thought. And Summerton's actually got a lot of raps about him and started to get a little bit of minutes at some points in last year. And only the 2 games, but did play some okay sort of minutes in that. But from what I've heard and what I've seen of Luke Summerton, he's actually a very, very good player. And I feel like he could overtake Sonny Luke in this side, and if, as I said, if there is an injury to Mitch Kenny, I'd really watch that space, and he could be a sneaky option.
Yeah, hookers never seen like the last time they had a relevant hooker in that team, fantasy relevant for Supercoach, would have been Coruscant, and to an extent, he wasn't really either. And I suppose it's one of those positions where you do just get Grant in, don't you? Obviously,
Yeah,
if we had an unlimited budget, Grant would be in the team, and that's kind of where we've spoken about that plenty of times, man. It's just the run at the beginning, the price, da 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 da. There's so many reasons to just go, maybe I'll just hold off for now. But inevitably, you are going to get Grant in your team and you're going to run with him for the rest of the year. And the Panthers just don't have that position for the hookers. They're just, you can't look at any of the three options in the app and say, these guys are going to be even cash generators. You know what I mean? Like I think that was a lot of people's intentions with Sonny Luke last year. Um, even as the bench hooker, and it was just one of those things where it just never happened. Um, and I think the fact that it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen for Sonny Luke. He's not 20 years old. He's not coming up through the ranks. I think he's what 28 or something. Like
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's deceptive too because he looks like a kid.
Yes, he
So
does.
like Kenny's got the spot. It's going to be one of those things where he's just a tackle bot. He goes out, does his thing, gives it to Yo and gives it to Cleary, and then they just do the rest of the play because that's where it's all generated from, realistically, between the two. Obviously, when Coruscant was there, they had that outlet too, which was really good for their attack. But it seems like Sonny Luke kind of disjoints things a little bit.
Yeah,
Whether or not that's the reason why he hasn't got the run that a lot of people would want him to get, because I can see him being good in another team. That's the thing.
yes,
Um, I could
yes.
see him being that sort of like Damien Cook,
Someone like the
like
Dragons.
Tom Starling, or
Dragons.
somebody where like he's got the frame for it, but he's quick and explosive. But it's different to how the Panthers are set up for it, and it kind of breaks them up a little bit, and it's not really what they need. Where Kenny is a tackle bot, just go out, do his thing. Admittedly, missed tackle bot, but it's effort, it's something. So not a position where you look at any Panthers players, unfortunately,
No, I
even as a
agree
dead
there.
spot. Yeah, I think
Yep,
it's a
I
short-lived
agree.
little segment, this one with the with the Penrith hookers. So
Um, Front row forward, we get into now, and again, I nothing really excites me, to be honest. Look, I love Fisher Harris and Leota as players, but I just have never thought of them really as a
yeah.
super coach player. Um, Lindsay Smith next up, not really, and Matt Eisenhuth. Maybe if you're looking at but for mine,
Mm,
Eisenhuth, even if you were looking at that player to step up for Lenu, he's just priced a little bit too high for my liking to even entertain that thought.
yeah. For 362, for a chance that he gets a small stint, it's just too much considering who else is around there that he's going to be at least locked into something half decent. Um, Besides Fisher Harris, who was probably one of the best props of the year last year, it doesn't translate. They don't translate to fantasy points, man. They don't come out and they get their base stats and they do a shift, but it just does not translate. And it's a shame too because I really like Fisher Harris as a player. I think he's a great player. And
Oh,
at
he's a gun. He's
515,
one of the
you're
best props in
thinking
the game
easily. And it's like a minimum 8 out of 10 every single time he's out
every
there,
week.
every single week. And like that's fantastic for the team when you watch it in
Yeah.
real life. But it just doesn't sort of work out
Not
the
my
other way.
super
But
coach team.
exactly, it's just not fair, really, is it? If only they put out like effort points for Supercoach and just bumped up,
Oh,
that was just a
he'd be
hard hit. You
almost
get an
first
extra
picked.
5. Yeah, yeah. But at 515, I suppose it's not a bad price for a 50 pointer every week. You know what I mean? Like he's priced at his average. And the thing is, like, he's not going to really dip from that. And I don't think he's going to climb from
Mm.
that. But if you just had 500K to spare and you really wanted to put into a forward and you love Fisher Harris, then like you're going to get a 50 out of him. And that's kind of the upside. The floor is also
And
probably 45. So it's, yeah, it doesn't spark joy, unfortunately, man, but he is a gun. So yeah, good one to
you're
watch,
right as
but
well with what you're saying in terms of especially that position, front row forward. I think it is a position where a lot of people just say, you know what, if I can get someone in there that's not going to cost me an arm and a leg and get me that 50-point week to week, you know what? I'll just take it. Like there's a lot of people out there that will do that and put their money elsewhere in like the halves, 5/8s, fullbacks, and even to a certain extent your wing centers that can really get that high ceiling. So if that's the sort of player style of player you are for Supercoach and want to start with, maybe it's not the worst option ever. But at the same time, I still think there's probably some cheaper options who will get you around that 50 mark that we will talk about in future episodes, and we've already talked about. There's one at the Dolphins, which sort of is hitting me on the head at the moment. But let's go second row forwards, because I feel like there's a little bit more talking points when it comes to this one, because Isaiah Yeo, let me just say right now, he was a sneaky player last year. Like, if you had Isaiah Yeo in your team, it wasn't one of the Fafitas, don't get me wrong, but an average of 69 last year, like he did his job if you picked it up, and he was pretty much a pod the whole year. I don't think that I've seen many teams at all that had him. So, and for 700K, if he can get you consistently that 70 sort of point mark, I guess it's a sneaky pod play. Like Penrith, you always know are going to be there, as we've said, even with the hard draw.
Yeah. At 700K, he doesn't have the upside I would want. Compared to like a Nakora, you know what I mean, who's right there at 700, who's going to bag tries pretty consistently, you know, playing in that team next to Hines, and he plays next to Cleary, so you can't knock him for that too, but it's not his role. It's like, it's not his thing. He's very much a ball player. You see him every time, like a second he gets the ball, like it's like time slows down for him. And he's able to just look around and just suss things out and go, okay, yep, sweet, here it is. And he plays the 80 too. Like, it's just, there's not many players that can do what Yo can do in the game in general. Again, it's a high price, but his average is 70. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to do that. He's also going to play all the minutes in the world too. So for that, I suppose it's a good safe option, but you're playing with a lot of cash when you're talking safe, and I'm not about it really. I think, you know, for what you're going to get for
Especially
700,
early on.
700's a lot to spend early on for very little upside. You're buying him at his average. Like, that's him. You know what I mean? I don't know where his price fluctuated last year. There was probably half a reason why he wasn't heavily owned too, considering who else was around that point. Like, you know, you had your Fafitas and you had your Olakowatus and all those big guys as well. And I just don't think there was room for people to have Yo, and Hopgood, obviously. So you had, you had a very similar sort of player in Hopgood too, when you think about like the position and the work rate and all, but obviously not in ladder position and the rest of the relevant stats that matter out of the two players there. But I just don't think it was much on the priority list. He was 10% owned last year. At the end of the season anyway. So it's a lot, man. I don't see it being much better than that, to be fair. Like, he was banging out, his highest score of the year was 91. And his lowest was 43, but that was in the midst of Origin and the work. So for the price to have the top score of 91 and all the rest hovering around that 70, it's like, if he was 100K less, you know, you'd throw the idea in there, it'd be tempting, but I just don't think the upside's there compared to the other guns at his price. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he's a weapon and he's a great player in a great side, and a lot of it, you know, does pivot around him too. So again, I think it's one of those, is he super relevant in fantasy if you're not playing for the base stat, specifically in the beginning? You know, he's one of those guys where if he ever does dip, which I can't see happening, it might be worth a shout, because any sort of dip with him is going to be temporary. You know, it's not going to be something where,
and I think,
you know,
I think this year as well, with what's around other clubs and this position, how it looks like, I'm going to say 90% of owners of Supercoach teams are going to go this year with the mid-range sort of mid to, I'd say, slash cheapish players. I just don't think, because I think most of those players will be able to do, like, won't be able to average 70. Don't get me wrong. that is, no one's hop god. Let me get that straight. But they'll be able to get you at least probably a 55, 60, and you're spending 300 to maybe 400K less. Like, it
Yeah,
just sort of
it's
seems like, especially as you said at the start, you don't want Yo. You're not signing up for Yo, I don't think.
nah, man, definitely not. And like the draw's not easy for Penrith, but that's kind of where Yo's points are in the base, and
Yes.
that's not going to change. I think even you probably come into round 1 to 5 and he's averaging 70, and you just expect it. But that sort of cash is so important at the beginning to really divvy. And if you're going to look at the price that Yo comes in at compared to Olakau'atu, who has the attacking upside, fair enough, he doesn't have the same base, but the ceiling's much higher. He's actually 5K cheaper. So for that alone, I would think you go for the attack, because you're still going to get a 50 to a 70 out of Olakau'atu as well, but the potential for a higher score is there, because he's going to go over the line a lot more frequently than you are going to get out of Yo. And for 5K or 6K more, you get Nakora. So you're hovering between two very, very lethal edge forwards that are going to score tries majority, not if not, every week. It's not going to happen every week, but they're going to get them consistently here and there. And then you can just come down a little further, and then you've got, Eli Katoa. And if you want to talk about a hard draw, the Storm are up there too. So, okay, base may not be there, which he really excels in, but the ceiling's higher. So, at the beginning, I just think, yeah, for the amount of mid ranges in the second row position, for the upside that you can get for less, it sort of steers you away from getting Yo. And I don't think, I honestly, I haven't seen Yo in anyone's team at all in any page. So yeah, he's a great draft pick. He's a great option for most formats, but I think at the end of the year, when you look at the overall scores and you think, wow, Yo, man, he averaged 69, scored this many points, it's fantastic. But it's the same every single week. And safety is fun to bank on, but it also doesn't, it's not going
Nah.
to, blow the lid
Not going
off.
to get you
So
the KFC bucket and
absolutely
40K and
not.
whatever else there is out there.
Pair of
So
socks and a
no thanks to
voucher,
playing
no
safe.
chance.
No,
Nah,
thank you.
nah.
Look, we've seen Zach Hosking leave the club, so that's definitely ensured Sorensen and Liam Martin are your starting edge back rowers there at Penrith. Sorensen doesn't really entertain me, even though he ended up having an average
Oh,
of 66 last year, which he
I
might be
haven't.
one. I know where you're going to go out here, and you love this one player
I
who's about this price mark that you love, but also look at Liam Martin, who's 80K cheaper.
Yeah.
I know he averaged 8 points less last year, but I'd also argue he played when he did get to play last year, he was busted. I don't think Liam Martin was fully fit at all last year, and he still
Nah.
played some quality football that he did, but he just didn't seem to be all there. If I was going for one of them, I'm probably going for Martin, but I feel like you're about to tell me why Sorensen's the option.
I I look at Sorensen. I looked at Sorensen last year and I thought, there's no way, there's no way he keeps going. But have you actually seen Sorensen's minutes that he played last year?
No.
Have you seen? You should probably check it out, man, because his PPM is insane. It's very impressive for a player who didn't play 80 that often.
Do you
You know
know
what I
him?
mean?
Tell us.
Hey,
Do you
okay,
know, do
let
you
me
know him right now? Or you,
off the top of my head, I could probably I'll go through them, man. I'll have a look for you because it was one of those things where I was looking at and I was going, you know what, man, he has a lot of upside, even still at his price and his output. Because I'll just go minutes, minutes over.
well,
Um,
while you're quickly searching that,
yeah,
let me just sort of get into your mind here. This is what I love to do, and I know the viewers love it when I do this. I get messages every week after these episodes. You love this one second rower who's in this price range, who has still upside, and you
yeah,
can flexibility in terms of trades in the future with this sort of price mark.
hmm
Is he looking like a better option than, say, I know you're South Sydney obsessed at the moment as well, Cam Murray? We will talk
yeah,
about South Sydney in a few weeks. I don't want to spend too much time on Cameron Murray.
yeah.
He has a very tough start to start first 5 games as well. Sorensen, I don't know. Like, you're starting to get me. Like, you're making me feel like Sorensen's your play.
Oh, look, okay, so it's not something that I've been going and advocating for a Scott Sorensen play for everyone, but I did have a look at Sorensen and I compared it to Liam Martin because obviously you want to get Panthers players in your team because they're just beasts.
Yeah.
And then I had a look, okay, so like Hosking's gone, you know what I mean? There's going to be less position rotation for Sorensen, and he's basically made that his now. Like I can't see him going anywhere considering what he did last year. He played quite a few games in around the 60-minute mark and still managed to put out pretty much the same sort of output. Maybe a slight tip, obviously. He's playing 20 minutes less, but it was very close to what he was sort of doing when in those games that he did play the 80 minutes. And, he was occasionally he'd get an attacking stat here and there. But if he's priced at, 65 of an average, somewhere around that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and he gets an extra 20 minutes a game, almost every other game, that has an upside. It's not huge for like a cash
What was his
generation side of
PPM?
things.
Did you say
Um,
that?
so his PPM overall for the season, it would have been near about close to a sort of point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's
Um,
just say it's a 0.85.
call it point 0.8, for example. I don't know what the actual number is for it, but it was a very, very impressive season for him. And he may do with the positions and the time that he had, but now he's going to get more. He's going to have that position again for a second season, and I don't think there's any competition that he loses that at all anymore. And I can only see his output going up. And I almost can't believe I'm even talking about Scott Sorensen.
Me either.
115. This could be a sneaky pod play because it's very unusual. Like I won't see him in a team. I don't think it's going to be unusual to see him in a team, but because there are other players at that price again. Like I do like the Cam Murrays and I do like these other proven guys, but I do see him doing it again and probably slightly more. So snip that and look at it at the end of the season
We
if he's
will.
done it or not. But
Do you like Liam Martin? Did what I say make a little bit of sense? He
yeah,
played
definitely.
busted last year.
Yeah, he did. I just don't think Liam Martin's as fantasy relevant as he appears to be when you watch him.
Another Fisher Harris.
Yeah, kind of. Minutes are his thing, injuries are a thing. It's just there's just too many ups and downs with the Liam Martin train to really jump on. And you look at his games that he played last year, and it was so patchy. A couple here, then a few weeks off, and then another game, and then another couple off, and another game, and reduced minutes between the two. Whether that was just last season, and this season he gets a straight run and he's just killing it every single game, not rotating as much because like they are losing the depth in that position to be spinning them all around. But I think Sorensen still puts out more than Martin does.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have origin, you know what I mean? Like he's one of those players that, especially in the Panthers side, when you are going to lose half the team, if you plan on running with him, he doesn't go anywhere. And I see him playing basically every game, barring any injuries that he hopefully doesn't get, with a higher output than he had last year. And it just makes sense when you see what they've got to work with, to what he did, and to where it could potentially go. I could be completely wrong, man. Honestly, it's a very unusual look, but it seems to me that it may not be half a bad shout to see him in someone's team. And it's a great pod too. Like if he keeps going, then like it's
Oh, it
fantastic.
is.
No one's going to have Sorensen, man.
Yeah.
And a lot of people missed the boat on him last year because it happened so fast. I didn't even look at him by the time he was max price, and I thought, Jesus, that would have been a fun ride to be on, man, because he was blitzing it. And by the time it was one of those, it's like, oh, is he going to keep the spot? Players are coming back. What's going to happen here and there? And he's like, no, he's actually going nowhere, and he's already max price, and you've already missed the boat. So, keep
It's
keep
only
on
early
looking.
in this episode, but you're playing up to our name. You're growing by the inches at the moment talking about Sorensen. I can literally see your desk
Can you see
rising
it?
up slowly.
Yeah, it was
So
shaking
it is.
violently.
I've never seen someone so excited about Scott Sorensen. So Scotty, you've got a massive fan in Jesse, and let's see. I'm interested to see how this next couple of weeks pans out and see if you end up with Scotty Sorensen. By the sounds of it, he wouldn't even be a bad, maybe sneaky draft play. maybe at
I think
some
he'd be an
point.
exceptional draft play for someone, genuinely.
So,
And this is where you can kind of make that same comparison where you go, all right, for Supercoach overalls, possibly not, maybe just because he's so focused on making that cash. But if you're playing head to heads, you're playing draft, I see him as a fantastic pick. I really do, and I think you might be able to even get him maybe a little later than you would expect, but um, it could be good. It could be good for him. And then like, who else is going to compete, man? Um, Liam Martin and them two are fine. Luke Garner, I didn't see much of him, you know, trying to wiggle his way into that position, and I don't think he's going to. I think a lot of the attention was around Luke Garner actually nailing that spot in preseason last year, and it didn't happen. And then here he comes. Old Scotty comes out
not
and just
interested.
cleans up. But it's one of those again where you look at the rest of their options and just don't. None of them really stand
Not
out.
much.
Hosking was great last year. I was straight onto Hosking the second he looked like he was going to be in that team.
Yeah.
Got in there before every price rise and made advantage of the very early points that he made, which was huge. So could be potentially great at the Raiders now that he's signed for them. If he gets a look in, I hope he does. Because he's at that 500 as well, and 80k less than Liam Martin. I think the output's pretty similar for that position, but again, different team. We'll have to just see what happens there. But yeah, it's either if you want to roll the dice on either of the two Penrith edges, go for it. But still a little pricey, I think, early days.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's pretty much, you've already said it. Scroll down the page. There's not too much more that interests me. Like, I don't know. There'll have to be absolute mayhem for me to be interested in Tyrone Peach, even with a centre wing duel.
Yeah.
Eisenhuth, we've already spoken about in the front row forward. You just mentioned Garner. The only one that sort of tempts me a little bit because of his price tag is Maverick Gaia, who I've been hearing so far is looking like he will get a 17, probably the 17 or the 16 jumper. So off the bench, maybe getting that Lenu type role in minutes. So if he's getting that, he's going to make us some cash. So if that is the case, I'll probably jump on him as my sixth choice in the second row forwards. Just basically because it's his bottom dollar, and will need probably a couple of those to actually get me some kind of cash generated there and go from there. But I'm not anticipating him to be like a Hopgood or set the world absolutely on fire. But he'll be someone that can maybe get us 100k or something. It might be a slow burn, but it could be something.
Yeah, I think it would be a very slow burn. I don't see the bench forwards in that team ever really turning over too much. A lot of their attention is focused pretty heavily through Cleary, through the wingers, the centers, the back line, Edwards and the like. So the forwards kind of just do a shift in for Penrith. They just do a job. Not a great deal of cash up, I suppose, Sorensen, but you're not going to expect it out of Guy. And I've seen so many people talking about him too. I think he gets that bench spot. I think he does. I think
I
if
think he
he's
does.
whether or not that's enough of a position for him to get onto, considering the team that he's in. If it was in a weaker team where he looks like getting more of a run, possibly for that cashy option, but in a very, very good side, like well-oiled machine like Penrith, he's going to come in, do his Lindsay Smith kind of thing, put in the effort, and then obviously come off. So it could be good. Like his bottom dollar, there's very little risk. You just hope he sort of makes that coin. But then you can make the same thing with like Liam Henry too. We've missed him in the front rows. He's another one that I've seen getting a lot of raps about getting into that bench spot as well, possibly for that Lenu position. But now that Hosking's cleared off, these two guys can make their way into it. Whether or not they choose these two over going for a Garner and Eisenhuth, the players that have played, first grade proper NRL footy before, and they've gone out there and done that run. They might want to blood them a little first, and you might be getting some red dots to start, but I don't know. It's not the team that I would look at for forwards and go, yep, that's a great cashy option, unless you think he's going to make it into that team. So, yeah, I've tossed him around into teams too, but again, you're only playing with that bottom dollar figure. That's all you. It's the only reason that you're picking Gaia out of anyone else is because okay, one, he's bottom, and you've just seen his name more popping up than others. So it could be one of those kind of situations where come around Origin period, he might even get himself a run, which is that kind of slow burn. If you're starting with him, it's going to be a long time before you probably see him get a proper run. But again, he's not going to go down, and you might even be able to loop him if he doesn't get named. And it's handy to have that option sometimes. But again, like, do you want to be looping into your second rows? It's kind of risky. So, yeah, approach with caution, man. Yeah.
Fun fact: I have never looped in my life. I actually don't really understand how it works still. And I've been playing Supercoach for years now. I've never ever looped in my life. I'm old school. I go with the game. I
Just commit.
name my captain. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
I
no, that's fair.
believe I reckon they should do something with vice captain. I reckon vice captain should be like not double points, but maybe like 1.5 or
0.5.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
100%.
would.
Like it should just be
Yeah,
double and 0.5.
I don't know why they haven't done
And
it.
get rid of the loop. Get rid of the
Get rid
loop.
of the
I hate
loop.
the loop. I've lost many times, and it
Yeah,
pisses me off by the loop. I feel like it's cheating in a way. I feel
don't
like
hate the
it's
player,
cheating.
mate. Hate the game.
Hate the
Look, I
game.
got to the
Oh,
position that I got to. I caught 14th last year. I think I looped
thanks
once.
for the reminder.
I looped once, and it was in a
I
it was in a
respect it.
round where I only had a starting lineup, so it
I
made no
respect
difference.
it.
I just did it
I
because I
respect
was
it.
like, oh, why not? I've only got a starting lineup, so yeah, you don't have to. It's completely unnecessary. But when you've got players like Hines, Cleary, Ponga, like who needs a loop? Just he's the best option. Just run
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
And if it backfires, like it's been backfired plenty of times. Jesus, I've captain Hopgood in round 3. Like I wish I didn't. You know what I mean? A lot of people did. A lot of people would have
I
tried
think
to loop
most of
out. So
Supercoach did.
yeah, exactly. So you just got to bite the bullet and go, this is your choice for the week. Commit, or you loop and then you just jump the gun and you look like a prick.
I'm going to try and hold my record as being a clean Supercoach player. Hand on my heart. So
Yeah.
let's quickly go through the hards because we will focus a little bit on Cleary in a minute, but obviously there's Brad Snyder as well, and I'll chuck the 5/8 as well. Luai, who hasn't really been Supercoach relevant now for some time. There seems to be just some better options out there. Dane Laurie, priced at 515. So even if with an injury, I just don't think I'll ever go there for Dane Laurie. And Jack Cole, a young guy coming through, young kid. Maybe who knows what happens with this Luai situation. There's still, I'm personally still hearing whispers around what could happen. I know Penrith are adamant they will not let him go this year, but I'm still hearing the relationship is a bit sour there. And who knows? Who knows if Luai came out and was kicking stones on the field for the first month of footy? I've got no doubt Ivan Cleary would knock on head office's door and say, "Just we need to let him go." And then if that was the case, I think Jack Cole becomes maybe an option. But let's talk on Nathan Cleary. We have spoken in depth about both him and Hines, the argument there. So I don't want to focus too much on that. I just want to focus more so on Nathan Cleary. He's obviously one of the GOATs of Supercoach recently. He's one of those players we've always said with Nathan Cleary, even for this year, if you pick him now, do not even think about getting rid of him. Even if he starts slow, he will come back and get you what you need. We have said it's a hard draw to start with, so that might impact him. But he will come back. He'll be better for it, and he'll catch up and get you your money back. Never, ever think about getting rid of Nathan Cleary. In saying that, are we starting with him?
We're back here again.
Well, I don't want to. I feel like every episode we have spoken about this at length, and people are probably going to message me now and go, "We get it. Shut up about it." But I think it's relevant every week.
It is the
And the
most
app's
relevant
about to open.
choice. It's the most relevant choice, and you're going to get this influx of people playing this thing next week, and is it 2 weeks away? And it's just like, is it Cleary or Hines? Is it Cleary or Hines? What do you do? It's like get both. Fucking just do it. Just get both. If you don't know, go for both, and then get rid of one if you have to. But it's not going to be Cleary you're getting rid of.
I don't want to give too much away, but I'm today in my head talk, my head everything. That's where I'm leaning more towards. I've got to be
Oh
honest.
yeah.
I'm starting to think. I'm
Oh,
starting to
that's
think about doing some big moves
the
with this team,
unthinkable.
and
Damn.
I'm yeah, because of that reason. Because I just think both players you just have in and you leave, and I just feel like I always want to have two guns in this position. So why would I
Mm,
then go ahead and try and waste 3 or 4 changes to make it happen? Like, do I start with Caesar and slowly work my way up to get Cleary? Because I'm starting with Hines no matter what. That draw the Sharks have early on, got to start with Nico Hines.
too good. Yeah,
I'm just
too
starting to
good.
think Cleary, I can maybe work some stuff around my team elsewhere and make up some points. But Nathan Cleary, he can get me 100 just by being on the field.
He breathes and he
Do I
makes
want to,
100 points, man.
yeah. Like,
He's
do I
the
want to
definition.
risk not having that luxury there, especially when Nico, because I'm going to have Nico early on. He has the buy. I need to cover that with some decent points. I don't think Caesar will do that for me. I don't want to waste trades. I just need to
Yeah.
try and have a bit more of a sit down and think. But back to Cleary. Sorry, don't want to get too
No, no,
bogged
like
down in my thoughts.
this is
But
about Cleary. Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's the hardest decision you're probably going to make at the beginning of the year, I think, which half you run with. The depth is there for halves, you've got choices. And it's so funny too, like you're talking Cleary Hines, Cleary Hines. You've got other halves too. Like you got other
100%.
guys there looking at. So that's almost like a pod play in itself, just not getting one of them. But I think you do yourself an injustice if you don't pick at least one.
It's
The
a
Sharks draw
big
is
move. That
fantastic.
is a ball. Someone has massive balls if
Oh, they're
they're making
huge.
that
They're like
play. Who
goat
have
balls. They're like mangoes. If you've just gone out and you go,
oh,
you know what? I'm just going to run with Cherry Evans and Mitch Moses, both of them. Forget these
imagine
other
if it
two.
worked. Imagine if it actually
There's a
worked out. Imagine if it brained it. That would be just the
yeah,
biggest. I would idolize that player all year. He would be. I'd get a photo of him and I'd stick it on this on our podcast
yeah.
thumbnail every week.
Every
So if
single
you're
week,
out
just in
there,
the
if you
corner.
do start that and it
This guy.
works, send it to the page. Your picture will advertise you on our podcast.
Yeah, yeah, and I reckon there will be people that do it. There'll be people that go against the grain of the Cleary Hines discussion, and they do run because do you understand how much cash that frees up for team building? Going from someone in the
Huge.
900s and just running, oh, I'm just gonna pop old mate in there for 650. You know what I mean? Like that's immense. And you try and find 200k without them, it's near impossible. So if you just don't have them, like I've seen teams without Cleary and Hines, and they look unbelievable. But again, like then you kind of make that same point. Okay, this half that I've got is going to score me maybe on a good week. You're going to get 80 out of Cherry Evans, fairly on a decent run. How much more is Cleary and Hines really going to get you than that for the price drop? Like, is that extra 10, 20 points of consistency worth a couple 100k? Where that couple 100k could be put into someone who's fluctuating from 20 to 30, 40 points up into the 60, 70s in your center wing, something like that, because that's such a big divide. So I don't want to play the devil's advocate with it because I'm definitely going to have one of the two. But you can kind of understand why, oh, you just come down a little bit and, the grass is still pretty green because they're not bad players, but I feel dirty not having one of those two in the team. And
I was going
I
to
think,
say, I've got to stop you there because you're actually starting to make too much sense with that. And
no,
do not
it's
brainwash
just,
anyone out there. Start
I
with
know,
one of
right?
them, please. You got to
Start
start
with
with
one.
one of
Start with one. You've got it.
them.
Like they're the best players in the game, and you look at their
Yeah,
averages. You got 95 at Hines from last season, and you've pretty much got 90 from Cleary. Um, they played one game apart. 20 games, 19 games. Obviously, Cleary has his Origin run. Hines didn't, but he also started injured, so that's where his games at the beginning have dropped off, and then obviously the rest of the year came up and then dipped at the end. So the next player down was Estre at 77. So you're
yeah.
talking 15 points for the difference of about 130k.
And the thing is, just my quick point before we move on positions. If you are thinking of starting someone else, and my tactics early on was try and play up to Cleary, I also feel like it's going to be a lot harder to do that early on because we've seen in the past super coaches a lot of the points early on, especially in the halves, are a bit lower than what we expect. So you'd be waiting and playing a bit of a longer game for Cleary. And by the time you probably can get him in, because let's say your Cherry Evans has made that money that you need to close that gap up or something, it's probably already almost Origin time. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't really want to get him now. It's going to be a waste. He's going to miss the next 3 or 4 games. Like, and you sort
Yeah.
of stuff yourself. That's why I think more and more in my head, I feel like I have to start with the 2 guns. But anyway, I don't want to give anyone too much away because me and Jesse are going to reveal our teams once again, and we're going head to head this year. So I can't give him everything. He needs to catch up to me. Remember,
I'm just
center
trying to
wings.
muddy
I
the
feel
waters
like
for you.
trust me, I've muddied my own waters many times today. So
Yeah.
I've actually lost thoughts of what my team looks like. Look, I want to start off first by the center wing saying there is some temptation here for myself, and there's a player that's more the temptation, which is a player I think is just a must. I think he's one of your first you put down in Talon May, who I think is just going to be an absolute. When we talk about cashies and increasing your cash flow early on, I think he's one of those must players because we've seen when he had that first full season, I think he averaged in the mid 60s or something. Like it
Mm,
was one of those
huge.
seasons is ridiculous. And that was coming off debut pricing. So it would have been fantastic back then to have him. I think a lot of us did. But even now, starting at 458K, if he can get close to that sort of average, even if it's a little bit less, he'll still make us 150, 200K, something like that. And
Mm.
that's just, you've got to be all over that one.
Yeah, Taylor May's a lock in. That's an easy one, really. I think you're probably going to see him in everyone's teams realistically. Taruva last
Rightly
season
so.
started out quite low, and compared to Toto, man, Toto's, in my opinion, probably the best winger in the league. Um, I have a massive man crush on Toto. I've had teams named after him. I've drafted him consecutive years. Like if he could be Diro, and I'd probably still look at him. But I think when it comes to just positional play, you don't want to get caught up with too many in the same team. Just naturally, it's just one
Hold
of
on a
those things.
second. Hold on a
You take the
second.
risk.
You've mentioned Toe. Now, I've got a point about Toe that I want to make to you before you say maybe not so far. I actually think if you're going to go a high end center wing, I'm actually starting to like Toe. And I'll tell you why. Because Crichton's gone, and we all know Crichton has super glue on his hands and did
Does.
not like to pass at all. Yet Toe finished the year last year with an average of 70.
Hmm.
And I can't look at all this stuff. I don't know how you guys do it all. I'm very fresh with all this stuff, but I can guarantee you a lot of that was just from his base work and him just doing his yardage and the like. He's not a noted massive try scorer, but that was because I think Crichton was inside him and would always run the ball or score it himself. That changes up this year. So he'll have his work still. I think there'll be an increase in tries.
Yeah, it wasn't
I
a big
think
year
Toto
for
is
him
a play.
compared to where he would sort of come in at. But again, like he would just be popping up 80s, 100s, 110s. Like it wasn't very hard for him to do. And
Seemed like a quiet year.
yeah, it was a fairly quiet year considering like
Yeah.
Toto's standards in general, but he still scored huge points
Yeah,
and
oh, massive.
just massive. And the guy's a beast. I love him. I think he's fantastic. Um, I suppose at the price point 730, you're going to look at that, or 720, I think he is. You're probably going to get a lot of people going for the centers that kick just to try and bump that up a bit because he obviously is relying on it. But the guy is like he eats meters for fun. Like I remember a couple of years ago, he was running like 280 meters average a game. It's like that is absurd. This guy's a freak. And like they called him a pocket rocker, but I'm actually pretty sure he's a bit of a beast. He's quite a unit. So he's not very short or anything. So I don't know where that sort of come from, but um, he's not that expensive for what you're going to get out of him. But again, like you're probably getting him at his, if not his highest price, close to it. Like you're not getting him to make any coin out of him, but that's not the point. Like you're getting him to score bulk points. Isaac Tungo's only a little bit lower than him too, and he had a really good season. Um, Again, May's such a big drop down from those guys, isn't he? Like you look at the rest of the Panthers center wing spots, and you think, okay, there's such a gap between where May is currently priced at in like the 45s kind of average to what they all score. Like all of them are up there. Even
Yeah.
Peachy was up there. Played 14 games, averaged 57. That's a lot of point upside for Taylor May to climb on. So it's one of those must-haves, I think, when he gets in there. And I think he's only going to complement, who he's playing next to. But I think I just glazed straight over to Ruva. He started obviously quite low last year. Not a massive output for him in the season. He had a good year. He did a pretty good job for what he'd done with. And then at the end of the year, he averaged almost 51. I mean, better than most. And now he's priced at
Most got rid of
518.
him, me
Yeah,
included.
exactly. Like you get him in
I got
there and you
over
just
him,
sort
and
of,
then he started scoring.
yeah, a lot of people did. And, fair enough, made a decent little cash. It was a good little payout at the end of that one. But again, you could have just kept him and played him. So I think May's going to be a lot of that. I think May's going to probably carry on that similar to overall. He might even get back up into the 600-700s at a peak. He might get a really low break even and then just pump this huge try line score again and think, okay, this guy's going to make really, really big coin. Whether or not you move from Taylor May into a Toto who might be more consistent, or you just keep riding the wave, there might not be a reason to get off him, but I think everyone should probably have him at least to start. And then, run the risk of doubling up on, it's never a risk to say run the risk, but get two Panthers edges, a winger and a center, because, one's probably going to help the other one. It's a nice little double up play, but it's a lot of coin to spend on two of them because they are probably, well, any of those top two between Toto and Tungo, they're one of the dearest center options you're going to get into with. So both going to give you massive points, but I think Toto's got to be the play if you really want to get into one of them for the bulk coin, definitely.
Last player to talk about in the fullback position, Dylan Edwards. And I know first up in our initial conversations around this, you didn't mind Dylan Edwards as a play because of the consistent points you will get. He's obviously not a Latrell. He's not a KP. He's not a Drinky. He's not going to get you the one. Or look, maybe he might. You never know what's going to happen this year. But I'm fairly confident he's not going to get you those massive, massive ceiling games that those guys can get you. But what you'll get from him is that consistent 65-ish sort of point range, and he could plug a hole. Maybe you can't afford to go all the way up in that 700K, he's 705K. That might be the play that you need to do. And if that is what the money left in your bank is, by the time you do your team, you can probably be, no, I don't think you'd be over the moon, but you wouldn't be kicking stones about having Edwards either.
Oh, yeah. Go and kick rocks. Nah, he's a great play. If that's what you've got to afford with, like he's a good player, man. Like he's going to play every single game. Seems like he's bulletproof at the moment. He's going to pop out a 70 pretty much every single week, and then you'll get that occasional 100-pointer where he's couple of tries and assist, that kind of thing, and that's never a bad thing. Just depends on how your team's structured, and if you need that consistent base, or if you can afford to run a little bit more risk. You've got other players at the 700s. Tedesco's close. You go down to Shans if you want to roll that dice. You got Pappenhausen even lower. Again, riskier, a lot riskier. So that's kind of where you go, okay, I don't mind the 700 for Edwards, but you can also go up a smidge and get into that high ceiling bracket too. Yeah, it's not the most exciting play to plug into your fullback spot, but it's definitely not the worst one that you could get in with. So just having a brief look. Yeah, Tedesco's just 2K more. Latrell's 90K more. Yeah, you go down. I don't like anyone below. Nowhere. So, and Nick Meaney, Jesus, I suppose he's priced off fullback points from last year, but he's not going to be there again. So, yeah, at the 700s, it's him or Teddy. Or you go down a little bit, and do you prefer the consistency of Edwards, or do you, play the Teddy game? He's got that massive ceiling again, but he's been on the decline for 4 years, just casually going down and down. So, could be another year for Edwards to just hold it and keep going up or keep running it. But he's a great player. He's consistent. He's reliable. Sometimes that's what you want in Supercoach. You want consistent and reliable. And you might be a late season kind of thing too, where you're like, I don't have the trades to be messing around too much, and I just want someone who's not going to mess me around. There's your Edwards. because there's not a lot of others. Gutho's in the same position too. So you can make that 100K between Edwards and Gutho for consistency and reliability. I think Gutho's probably got a bit more upside attacking wise because he seems to be everywhere. But you also at that sort of really, really high ceiling of Walsh, Turbo. But then you've climbed up, or you're over 120 odd K plus on what Edwards can do. So if Edwards can increase that ceiling, if he can get that attacking game really dialed in, just a try here and there, it's all he needs. He could push himself up a bit higher too. And that's where that 700 might be really appealing because he's doing what the 800, the 850s, he's doing what they're doing. And he started off last season doing exactly that. He was probably the most in-form fullback within the first few rounds. Nothing says that he can't do it again, but that draw's really rough, so might not be worth it for that sake. But yeah, good player.
I think that's it for the Penrith Panthers. I think we've done quite a good job there. Anything finally you wanna mention or discuss around the Panthers?
Don't let the draw steer you away from choosing the value in them. Obviously, we covered the value, and there really doesn't seem to be a lot of actual value outside of Taylor May because the team is so structured and they have been doing the exact same thing for the last 3 years. Is you know exactly what you're going to get out of them. You know what you're going to get from Cleary, and that's amazing points. You know you're going to get from To'o, the exact same thing, and obviously Taylor May comes in at a really nice price. So I think out of anyone, you're probably looking at those three as your potential go options. Obviously Edwards, if you were priced into it, I think he's probably a great pick too. Just pay attention to the forwards, I would say, at the moment. Maybe a few of them are a steer clear, but just keep an eye out on what happens with those two, the Henry and what's Gaia, Henry and Gaia as your bottom dollars. If they can get in there and they look like getting a 30-minute stint, they're only going to go up in price. So great cashies at the minimum price, and their elite tiers are elite. So if you can afford them, get them.
And I think we've discovered a bit of not a love triangle, maybe just a love affair between yourself and Scotty Sorensen. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep
an
you
eye
updated,
on it.
viewers,
Just
over the next few weeks how this love affair between Jesse and Scotty Sorensen is going. But